It is the best time of the week again. I'm sitting here with two of my colleagues. It is the Sutler Ventures IOST Podcast. I kind of screwed that up. Let's restart.
No, I think it was good, man. No restart.
No
We're just free rolling.
Okay, so this is the IOST Podcast. We're no edits, no cuts, completely live.
Yep.
No filter.
That's why you're gonna
no stops.
No stops. That's why you're gonna always hear us be like, Dima, talk closer to the mic. What are you doing? God damn it.
What are you talking about?
What's going on, everybody? This is another edition of the IOST Podcast. We're happy to bring you another full week of news. We have BitBoy from the crypto influencer YouTube type on the podcast this week. It was actually a great interview. He's a YouTube influencer. He's going to have a lot of cool content, a lot of, ideas to throw at us. So what do you think of the interview?
I liked it. Yeah, I liked it a lot. He's been in crypto, I think he said, since 2012. So he's definitely somebody to pay attention to. He even said that he called the bottom back in December. So
he did throw that subtle shill for himself there for a second. How you doing, Dima?
I'm doing great. Lots of things to talk about, as we close out this week with quite a bit of volatility in the markets. So definitely exciting times.
It's a nice way to put it, volatility.
Yeah. Your first Dimitri's desk, although I don't know if that's the full title, but your first Dimitri's desk was actually very on point with the analysis.
Yeah, it was not bad. For this one, I'd like to see actual prices on the right side, of my technical analysis that I did. Mm-hmm. But we want to do an update on rewards as well for Sutler. So Mike has more on that.
Yeah, definitely. So as we've talked about before, we want to be as transparent as possible with you guys, right? So our main account is Sutler, Sutler, and then we have basically 4 sub accounts that the votes that we receive, because you awesome voters are voting for us, that's where we send these votes at the end of every month. So we've got Sutler Vest, which is the primary amount of our tokens, the primary way that we use them for marketing of IOST, marketing of Sutler and Sutler's projects, and then investment into IOST projects. That's about 45%. The team, right? So paying Block Venture Coalition for the time that we're putting in here versus going out and doing something else is about 30%. We've got about, I think, 15% for node tech, right? Which, if you look at the numbers, like we've said, well and above what you need to run an IOST node. IOST is very affordable to run a node, but we understand that as the network grows, there might be other requirements, right? Whether it's renting the actual hardware or it's storage requirements. So we've got a little fund there going as well. And then finally, Sutler Legal, right? So you've got Sutler Vest, you've got Sutler Team, Sutler Tech, and Sutler Legal. Sutler Legal is also a way for us to basically set some IOST aside just in case we ever have any issues. We are based in the U.S. Don't foresee any of those issues, but want to make sure we keep those podcasts going,
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's the beauty of the blockchain. You guys can follow along on these addresses and see where, our funds are being allocated and making sure that we're doing the right thing with those funds that we're getting from you guys voting for us, to be honest. So we're going to get right into the podcast. But before that, we're going to talk about the 20k IOST giveaway. Some of those funds that we're getting from awards, we obviously put towards marketing. So that's going to be part of this little IOST giveaway. Can you give us some updates on that?
Yep. Yeah. So 20,000 IOST, like you said. And then we also have some brand new swag, as you can see here at the front of the video. So some hoodies, some polos. We're going to be giving away some swag alongside that 20,000 IOST giveaway. Basically, what we need you to do in order to qualify is subscribe to our YouTube channel and then also comment on the YouTube video, on this podcast video. But instead of just kind of a general comment about Sutler or about IOST, in order for you to qualify, you have to give us some information on what you want to see IOST and the IOST community improve on, right? So I think we've come a long way. We talk about that with BitBoy in the podcast a little bit. The kind of pump we've seen, the growth we've seen, the real strong fundamentals we've seen with IOST, but there are always ways that we can improve, right? So we want to hear from you guys. We're going to take the data. We're going to take the feedback that you give us. We're going to take it to Ben, and we're going to take it to the IOST team and see how we can help improve upon IOST there. So again, in summary, 20,000 IOST, some Sutler Ventures swag, all you've got to do is subscribe to our YouTube and then comment on this YouTube video with where you want to see IOST improving.
That's awesome. Well, we're excited to get to that giveaway. Also, if you need to comment on Dimitri's hair, please comment at all times. We like to do that. We're actually headed to New York this weekend. I forgot to mention that.
Yeah, we're so it's a trip we do every year. Basically, I've done it with Andrea for the last 3 years, and some people we go with have done it for like a dozen years. We're going to the Belmont, so we're gonna race little horses. Maybe we'll do some iPhone video recordings or something for you guys.
Go live for the boys.
Yeah, maybe.
Nice.
We'll see.
All right, cool. Well, we'll get into the podcast. We have a ton of topics to get to. We have the Unitopia announcement that just came out that's going to bring kind of a Dapp house of sorts to IOST. We've got the on-block integration for IOST Play, the IOST bi-weekly report, Dapp rankings, as well as another edition of Dimitri's Desk, and then we'll get to the interview with BitBoy. So if you guys want to wait around for this, interview with BitBoy, please do. We have a ton of cool content. So we'll get to the Unitopia partnership. This is essentially bringing a Dapp platform that has multiple games within it to IOST. They're based out of, I believe, Hangzhou, China, so I think like mainland China. Don't quote me on that. I'm not an expert on geographics of China.
I'm impressed.
But yeah, they're bringing basically a Dapp house where they have a ton of different games that have their own token economic model within these games. So yeah, we're super excited for more Dapps to come to this platform. I think we had this talk with BitBoy on the podcast, but right now quality is important, but quantity is just as important while we're getting started as a new protocol.
Yeah, I know, for sure. I mean, you got to have a little bit of both in order to really showcase the community that IOST has. I think the more Dapps out there that you can show, even if they are at first here a little simpler, or they're gaming or gambling focused, right? Those are kind of the low hanging fruit Dapps like we talk about with BitBoy. The more the better. So to kind of get one partnership that's going to bring multiple Dapps is always good.
Yeah, and just looking at their website, one of the apps they're showing William. I didn't get a chance to look at the actual game, but they say that they have 300,000 users on there.
Oh wow,
so that's great. That's just one app.
So these are significant then.
Right. And but I'm really interested in actually having apps that were developed and transition into blockchain or integration, which is something that's happening right now. So this is great overall for IOST, of course.
Yeah, the big argument that is kind of springing up is whether you create a Dapp just from the infrastructure of blockchain, or you bring an existing Dapp or existing application into the blockchain. So that is an interesting conversation. But again, it's always good to see new Dapps come into this ecosystem. So we'll get to the next quick story. It's on-blocks integration. I believe it was June 1st that the official announcement came out that IOST Play had integrated it into OnBlock. So OnBlock's kind of bolstering its little stockpile of games on its platform. It'll be interesting to see how users are impacted through OnBlock. I don't know if that's going to bring a significant amount of users right off the back, but it will be interesting to see from June 1st on that OnBlock integration, did their users increase?
Yeah, overall, I've been really impressed with how quickly the OnBlock brand and team have moved. Generally, when you see announcements, there is an announcement of announcement, which we got from Jimmy, right? Doing the Justin Sun thing a little bit here, which is always, it's good for building hype. We got that. We got the announcement, and then just weeks later, OnBlock was out there actually integrating. So with a few Dapps that it's now integrated with, they're really kind of setting the bar high for a lot of other integrations in the space, a lot of other block producers in the space. I mean, already OnBlock is the 5th largest block producer on IOST now with looks like 135 million votes, just about. So very impressive. Well done to the OnBlock team.
Yeah, I want to give a lot of shout out to the OnBlock team and the IOST Play team. You guys are really doing a great job as far as holding a flagship for how development should be done on this platform. Obviously, there's a ton of other Dapps on the platform, but you guys are doing a great job.
Cool.
Yeah. All right, so we'll get to the biweekly report. Mike, you had that biweekly report. Dima, you've got it up too. So if you guys want to combo attack this one, go right ahead.
Absolutely, yeah. These again, so these biweekly reports twice a month. They're coming out directly from the IOST team. The title this week is "Strong Dapp Pipeline Continues with Over 60 Million Transactions to Date." So, like we said on the last episode or the episode before, having heard from the IOST team, there are dozens of dApps in the pipeline, some of which are gaming, but many of which are not. So I would imagine we're going to continue to see a lot of announcements, just like the one we talked about, where multiple dApps are coming through, which is huge. They give some mainnet statistics. The biggest things I got from the biweekly report, which came out on June 4th. Some of them are kind of recreated from previous biweekly reports, where now it's kind of official, as before it was an announcement. Number 3, IOST and BPAL or BPAL. I'm not really sure how you pronounce it, but it's just BEPAL. BPAL joins IOST as a new partner node, right? So did a little bit of research. BPAL is essentially a hardware wallet and software as a service company for cryptocurrency. So they have Tron, they have ETH, they have EOS, they have a variety of other cryptocurrencies that their hardware wallet supports, which is a really sleek, beautiful hardware wallet. So it wasn't Ledger first. I know the IOST team is working on Ledger. They're actually looking for developers to help with that integration. So if you're out there, you're a developer, you have experience in doing that, hit us up. We'd love to connect you. But PAL is basically coming in as that hardware wallet and as that kind of software as a service business for IOST, bringing IOST to their current community.
Yeah, and for me, one thing that stood out for me is the number of accounts and basically the number of dApps launched on IOST. What I like to do is when I look at these type of reports is compare it to something that's already been out in terms of protocols and others. And I know I've brought this up before, but I'm going to bring it up again. If you look at something like EOS, when they launched until now, they were basically, if you take the average, they were gaining about 100,000 accounts per month. So, and we've been around for about 3 months now. We're sitting at 319,000 accounts. That shows a healthy growth of a network.
Nice. That's huge. Yeah. And another thing here in regards to mainnet statistics, May 22nd, 23rd, 26th, 27th, and 28th. So almost 5 straight days there. IOST, really significantly did more transactions than ETH, right? So kind of comparing the two, understanding how long ETH has been around, understanding, their current community, all the things they have going with decentralized finance, and understanding how new IOST is. These are good signs, right? From a fundamental standpoint, this is what we want to see.
So when do we have decentralized finance DApp on IOST? When do we see other dApps other than those gaming dApps?
I think, for me personally, I think decentralized finance is a longer term play. Decentralized finance really started on ETH, but I think a large reason that it started there was because of the talent that they were able to attract over time, right? So it's been 5-6 years since ETH started. Now they've really been able to do a good job of attracting some of your kind of more institutional talent or folks to that ecosystem. Obviously kind of the scalability issues that ETH has hampers its ability to really be successful, especially in taking dApps to the mainstream. CryptoKitties as the best example. So it makes sense to me that DeFi has kind of come to the forefront with ETH based on who is actually working on it. And based on some of the kind of kind of struggles that they've had. So DeFi is big. It's talked about, right? It's hyped up, but I think it's a longer term play for IOST. I don't think it's going to be something where we really immediately just kind of revolutionize the DeFi space. I think the focus should be on number one, your lower hanging fruit, like your gambling and gaming dApps, which IOST is doing a good job of, and then kind of expanding past that with non-gaming and gambling dApps.
Social media platforms, maybe.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so we'll get on to the next and almost final topic here before we get to Dimitri's desk is the Dapp rankings came out. This is bi-weekly, obviously. This is the partnership with Dapp.com where we send kind of a Dapp rankings of sort to them to be posted on their website. So that's good kind of exposure for IOST and, good exposure for Sutler Ventures as well.
Yeah, shout out Dapp.com. Really appreciate those folks over there. Like we've said many times, they're doing a killer job, and their support for IOST has been unmatched.
Yeah, absolutely. They actually put out a article the other day on IOST saying, what is IOST? And the image actually was, what is ISOT? So that was interesting. That got a little bit of funny comments on their Twitter profile. But anyways, we'll get to the Dapp rankings. IOST Play and Token Pocket are probably, understandably, wallets aren't essentially decentralized applications, but I put that on there for users that maybe, just coming to our ecosystem and need to know about the tools that they have. But IOST Play and Token Pocket are sitting up at the A category. Liebi Pool moved up this week. I think they are, quote unquote, a decentralized finance application. I use their Dapp. The instant redeem that we talked about actually works. I completely redeemed everything that I had voted for them. I got a 26.6 or what have you on the APR. So everything they're touting as a platform worked. So they kind of moved up in the rankings a little bit. iWallet's still there. Endless Dice has fallen off. I think we talked about this. Like health of a platform, social media has a lot to do with that. So we haven't actually heard from the Endless Dice team in a while. Telegram's kind of silent as well. So there are some issues there, which is the reason they kind of fell off. But I know you guys had some comments on Endless Dice specifically.
Yeah, I heard from you kind of what was going on behind the scenes. And I know, Dimitri, we talked a little bit before about kind of how Berminal has, kind of fallen off in users, it seems a little bit. I mean, it doesn't worry me really. You have really Ray behind these two projects or three projects in Endless Dice, Berminal, and Burmy, where Burmy is very clearly the leader. Maybe it's just a little too much, and the focus is solely on Burmy. With that being said, it's not good to just kind of leave stuff hanging like that. But having talked to the team a little bit, it seems like Burmy is kind of the big right hook that they're focusing on. So,
yeah, and rightly so.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the users are there, the growth is there. All in all, obviously it's not good, right? Social media, you're exactly right, is key, but I don't think it's kind of a I don't think it's a giant problem or something that anybody should really freak out about it.
It's not like a mortal wound, but it does show a little bit.
If you got a giant bag of Endless Dice, yeah, I'm sure you're like freaking out right now. Don't blame me.
Where's the admin?
Yeah, don't blame me on that front. Yeah. But for IOST in general, I'm not worried.
The volumes have been okay in terms of transactions. If you look at the overall in dApps for Endless, but kind of picking back off what you said, Mike, when you have these first applications start on protocols, like something like Endless, it's great, it catches a lot of attention, brings a lot of, benchmarking in terms of transaction speed and if the network can handle those things. So it serves its, purpose. And then, essentially new things are coming out and so on that being built on the network, and Berminal was great as well during the hype, when ICOs were going on and crypto was booming. The news app was great. Right now, things are a little bit different, but this essentially this is crypto.
Yeah,
for sure.
And I kind of like the way you put that. I mean, if Endless Dice does, in fact, kind of slowly trickle away, it did do its job in the sense that it brought legitimacy to the platform right when it was starting. Because Endless Dice was that first app on the platform, on the protocol. So, that really helped IOST out when it was just first, taking its literal first step.
Yeah, and obviously this is all speculation, right? These are rumors based on rumors here. So
yeah, it's what we're thinking.
Yeah, I mean, this is always just off the top here.
This is directly from the IOST team.
Not true. Hashtag not true.
Yeah,
but I mean, for me, the people who are popping bottles right now is IOST Play. right?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. If they look at the competition that they had with Endless Dice, now that's kind of, not fallen completely away, but fallen off just a bit, they put some space in between themselves and Endless.
Yep.
But, the nature of gambling dApps, man, that's going to be hard to, stop upstarts, essentially.
Yeah, and if you kind of take a step back too and just look at gambling dApps as a niche in general, it's a niche within a niche within a niche kind of deal. They haven't really been around for that long. I think they kind of grew in popularity with this, staking model. Bet Dice was a big one on EOS where in the depths of the bear market, you could basically go and, it's a cool game. You can gamble, whatever. But, I think really people used it because of the mining schedules and because of the staking where, now you can, if EOS is dumping in this example, right, you can go out and get some Bet Dice. You can stake it, mine it, whatever the correct term is there. And really make some money if you're able to get in at an early stage. So with crypto coming back now, maybe this is kind of maybe this is kind of a falling off for gambling dApps a little bit. Who knows?
That it's 50-50 or even maybe skewed a little bit the other way, maybe 60-40. The fact that it's definitely it's a high risk environment essentially, but
100%.
So they're gonna have a tough time, pulling off, keeping the rest of the gambling dApps away. IOST Win was an addition this week. That is another gambling dApp that came to the platform, and they actually had the highest volume. I think they did $1 million $1 million in volume over a 24-hour period. Crypto Ninjas was also one. That's one we did on the last podcast. They essentially all kind of fall within this C category where it's like meh.
Kind of close.
It's like you're kind of there. If you do a little bit of additions, you can get up to that B category. But and anything after the C category that we have up on the screen is going to be probably removed almost entirely here shortly.
Yeah, that's kind of the D or F category is kind of like a wink wink. Be careful with that setup kind of deal.
Yeah, so. RIP. So
how are the translations for these applications? Are we still struggling in terms of, having them translated, let's say, in English?
Yeah, so actually it came up on the BitBoy podcast that we have coming up shortly. He was talking about how using these dApps, it was tough to actually interact and figure out what was going on because of the translation barrier, because of the cultural barrier, a lot of that stuff. So, that's all happening.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, I would imagine as hopefully us and BitBoy and Crypto Beatles and a lot of the other folks within kind of the North American or European IOST ecosystem here, as we help pull IOST along here, hopefully we can kind of help create that demand where now these dApps say, okay, it's actually super important for the growth of my user base to translate this stuff. But as we sit today, Lord knows what the percentages of your users, Chinese speaking or Asian speaking users versus US. So from a business standpoint, I kind of don't blame them there if there's not a ton of North American users yet. Neo is one that we always kind of compare IOST to. So I think we'll get there, but it'll be interesting to kind of see how we get there. Right.
Yeah, and I think we're almost waiting for that first app, but it's kind of here already with IOST Play. Like, I think that's one of the reasons IOST Play has done so well, because all the North American users, they're great with their interface, they're great with their Telegram, they're great with their Twitter, they're great with basically promoting to Western audiences. But we'll finish up here with Dimitri's desk. Dimitri, what do we got going on?
All right, let's jump into IOST USD daily chart. This is something that looks very familiar from the last podcast. Have the same type of indicators and lines outlined. Now, it's important to take a look and see how this range has played out since the last podcast. We were at the top of the range during the last podcast, and then we had the dump, right, that happened in crypto overall, which is interesting because IOST is still remaining within that range that I showed, between a penny and 0.4. We're still staying within that, while other cryptocurrencies are showing a change in trend, essentially. They're making lower lows. I've also added a new indicator in this chart as well, which is called ADX. It's mainly used for spotting ranges and trending markets. So the idea for this indicator is basically when it's shown to be above 20. I'm not going to go into calculations of how the actual indicator works, but you can look that up yourself. That's there's a lot of math behind it. But if the indicator is showing that it's above 20, then we're coming up on a trend essentially. If it's below 20, then it's showing a range environment, trading environment. So as you can see, in the past we've been below 20, we've been ranging. We broke out here above 20. We've been picking up, and essentially it was a strong trend upwards. Now we popped up a little bit above 20, but we're dipping back down. We're sitting at 20.8 at the moment, and I would probably see that move back below 20 to signify essentially the range. So right now we're actually sitting at the bottom of the range that I have outlined here. We're still, the 50 moving average is still above the 200-day moving average, which is still good. The price itself is below the 50-day moving average, so that just signifies, essentially consolidation. So looking forward, we're looking for the price to hold this basically channel right here to continue the range and essentially a possible breakout once we get to the top side of the range. But that's essentially going to be based on price action. Another thing really quick that I wanted to show you is essentially the Btc Dominance and how it essentially interacted with the current market conditions. So we saw that BTC Dominance reached as high as 60%. Like I mentioned last podcast, we dropped down to like 56. We're essentially kind of within the same range, about 55% now. It's interesting to notice how the alts have actually gained dominance throughout essentially these market conditions. So we see BTC taking a big hit, but and alts obviously trickling down as well, but the overall dominance is actually looking like it's picking up for alts. So it'll be very interesting to see how that rotation happens that we always talk about, where BTC holders rotate into alts because it's that alt season and they're chasing yield. It's all about that risk environment. If we get a good risk environment, the people will start chasing yields beyond what Bitcoin offers in terms of volatility. So when I say, it's an exciting time in the market and, and there's plenty of volatility there, it's actually really good for traders because traders love volatility. When the volatility is really low, there's not much of an opportunity to chase that yield, in terms of
like short-term trading.
Exactly for short-term traders. So of course that comes with risk as well. But
how much of Bitcoin's dominance when it's, starting to peak and then when it starts to, dip a little bit, how much of that has to do with Bitcoin's price falling and not necessarily alts rising in price?
That's a good question. That obviously has happened in the past. But the idea is that you look at actual market capitalization of everything and then see how the alt dominance reacts to that. So then in that way you can see, essentially if it has to do with Bitcoin being dumped or or whatnot.
Gotcha.
But
interesting. Yeah, I mean, it was pretty clear to me yesterday, really. So this would have been what's today? Wednesday, Tuesday. So it would have been a Tuesday. Oh man, I'm hurting here. Evidently, I'm halfway through the beer.
What beer do we have today?
It's the same one, Maine Beer Company Porter. Yeah, it's been a while. So
we still haven't got that beer from that YouTube commenter. What's up, man? I thought you were a man of integrity.
Gonna deliver it. Right, anyway, as we saw on Tuesday, BTC started dumping hard, right? And ETH for a while, a lot of kind of the quote unquote main alts held strong. They've obviously dipped a bit since then. Some of your less known alts like IOST and some of these others were at the time on Tuesday down 8, 10, 12%, something like that. So all in all, if you are an alt focused trader or investor, this dump is probably the best thing in my opinion that we could have seen for alts. I think the big worry around the community has been that BTC is just going to keep climbing to 10 or 11 or 12 without any sort of, alt pump, right? Mm-hmm. Because what happens is when BTC is just pumping like crazy, you get that opposite rotation like Dimitri talked about. So instead of people taking their BTC wins and moving it into alts for those wins, i.e. chasing that yield, they do the opposite, and they cut their losses on alts, and they try to jump on the BTC train before it's too late. If you're an alt holder, if you're holding IOST, in a lot of ways, you don't want a BTC pump from 3,500 to 11,000.
That makes sense, like logically, but when I go to these CoinMarketCap site, when I go to CoinMarketCap, and this is so pleb, but if I go to CoinMarketCap and I see Bitcoin's pumping 6% and it's green, usually all the rest of the charts are green as well. Usually what you see is Bitcoin drops that red 5%, that red 4%, and everything looks blood red. So when Bitcoin pumps, it from a very broad view, it looks like it brings the market with it. It
usually does, and I think that's where the concern has been over the last few weeks or months, right? Is because that, if you look at a lot of the run up in 2017, certainly you would have maybe BTC kind of leading the pace, right? They'd be the first to move. So if BTC's up 4 or 5 or 6%, if it can hold that and it doesn't just dump back down, generally you see alts, hitting 10, 15, 20, and then you have, we talk about this a little bit in the podcast with BitBoy, then you have some that will hit 40 or 50 or 60% jumps, right? It kind of depends on exposure for those alts. But I think that's been the concern over the last few weeks or months, is that, holy hell, like Bitcoin's just going nuts, and the IOST BTC pair or ETH BTC pair or whatever it is, right? Whatever that kind of alt BTC pair is just getting absolutely crushed. People get nervous and they kind of cut their losses there, which further emphasizes that BTC dominance and that worry with alt. So again, for me as someone who is both Bitcoin forward and alt forward, this BTC dump, while it did dump down some alts, I think in the long term is good for alts, because it's going to really kind of reset a lot of the money that has flowed back in, especially the retail money that's flowed back in as we went from 3,500 or 4 up to 8 and up to 9. So I think it's kind of a time to catch your breath here. The market's been wild over the last few weeks or months. Catch your breath. Take a look at the fundamentals, like we're always pushing, and hopefully we see some nice kind of rotation of funds all around.
Yeah, just kind of give you an idea. We're up more than 150% for BTC USD this year. Getting a correction that is 20%.
Yeah,
I mean, if you put it that way, we've seen that so many times when it comes to BTC, where time comes and something like this happens, right? Where it just runs out of steam, essentially it drops down, and then it gives an opportunity for people to actually scale in more as the trend develops.
Q, you're smiling. Are you feeling better after Dimitri's desk now?
I'm feeling a little bit better, but I'm just smiling because of what he just said with how it takes a 20% dump after going up 150, but people are still texting you like, why is Bitcoin dumping? It's like, dude, we're up 30% on the month. You know what I'm saying? So
it all depends on where you buy it.
Yeah, it's true.
Another thing that's very interesting we talked about before is also the fact that now that we have stable coins, it offers an opportunity for traders to really not, do this whole cycle of getting into BTC and then dropping into alts, or then dropping out of alts, getting into BTC and then get into fiat. Given an opportunity where it's like you can now move in and out of Tether, out of your alt, no matter how you feel about Tether. But there's also others that are available as well. So that actually that disrupts that link, where you mentioned, where you see, maybe BTC pumping and some things are not, not as pumping as high, whatnot. So that relationship is still there, it's still there, but the stable coins, to give more opportunity for traders to move around, when it comes to when the risk sentiment changes in the market, they don't have to, do that whole dance where they go from alts into BTC to fiat, so, because there's blood on the streets,
So is the introduction of stablecoins kind of like gonna spur the term decoupling always comes to mind, but is that gonna spur like a decoupling of one of the top alts that's fighting Bitcoin at some point?
I don't think it would be that extreme.
Okay.
I think it's honestly less of decoupling, more of just like a benefit utility that gives more flexibility to these traders to move around.
Awesome.
Yeah, it gives you kind of like that safe haven versus having to, unless you want to fully cash out into actual USD, hard USD on an exchange, you can now easily move into a stable coin. But I mean, we talked a little bit more about this on the interview. Definitely stay tuned on that. BitBoy, he had some really good points, and kind of continuing on those. When you look at IOST specifically, right? Kind of taking a step back and looking at where we've come over the last 12, 16 months here, right? Which I think for most probably haven't been around, in IOST that long, but we were, at 4/10 or 5/10 or 6/10 of a penny for really some time on IOST. And he talks about this where in a period of 3, 4, 5 days, we went from something like 0.8 of a penny up to almost 2 pennies, which percentage wise is a huge jump. We've kind of pulled back from there, but understanding that there's a small group of people who knew about IOST before mainnet, right? They got in under a penny. They're still sitting comfortably, right? They're still up in the same way that those people that got in at 3 or 4 or 5 on Bitcoin are still up. But then there's a much larger group who have gotten into IOST after mainnet, right? So certainly there's some people who got in at the top, right? Penny and 7/10, penny and 8/10, something like that, almost 2 pennies, where now if we're back at 1 penny and you're down 40-50%, I understand the concern. One thing I talked about on the interview there is that I think if we can get to that 2 penny or 2.5 penny mark, not only are we going to retain a lot of those, those users, those holders out there, some of whom might be, those listening or watching here today. Once you're able to kind of cash in on that first piece, maybe you peel off a little bit of that investment and move it elsewhere, but hold on there. It's not that we're just going out and throwing up 80% on CoinMarketCap or Masari or something, which is going to bring in interest, but we're also kind of satisfying the investment that we've seen from, say maybe a penny 2 to a penny 8.
Yep, and another thing that BitBoy had brought up, we don't mean to be like giving away the whole episode here. Exactly. Is once people kind of feel comfortable with staking and the benefits of staking and seeing the benefits of staking on IOST, that's going to drive a little bit of interest too. But guys, that was an absolutely phenomenal Dimitri's Desk
beautiful
segment. So hopefully we can continue those. Obviously, if Dimitri wants to continue them, but we'll get to the interview here with BitBoy. Before we go, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe on these videos. Obviously, with the 20k IOST giveaway, subscribing to our channel and then commenting about what IOST can do better. Correct?
Yep, 100%.
Okay, that's awesome. Well, we'll get to the interview. Thanks again, guys, and we'll see you next week. All right, guys, welcome back to the IOST Podcast. We have one of the biggest influencers on IOST right now for an interview, so we're super excited to have him. BitBoy, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Glad to be here. Glad to talk IOST any day of the week.
Awesome. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, one of the most interesting things that I've heard from other influencers in the space has just been kind of how they got going, right? Like it's really impressive to see the number of subscribers and viewers that you have. How did you kind of get into all of this?
So I've been into Bitcoin since 2012. I had to make a purchase, not Silk Road related. I always feel like I got to point that out. I had to make a purchase for a software that I was using for a business that I've had for several years. I actually just closed it. And the guy was only taking Bitcoin for it. So it was really complicated. People think it's complicated now trying to buy Bitcoin and send between wallets. Back then, it was an absolute nightmare. But I got into it at that point. Didn't really understand the technology or the underlying, message of decentralization. But, over time, by just watching the space, I did learn more about it really got super active in the community in 2017. And then, so BitBoy, I'm a grown man and people call me BitBoy. So, people are always like, what the heck is up with that? So, BitBoy is a cartoon character I created, and I started my channel as the medium for that cartoon series. I learned how to animate and do some different stuff, but I was finding it was just taking too much time for the amount of views I was getting as interest in crypto was waning at that point. So, I started doing news videos and interviews, and I started having people on my channel, and everybody just called me BitBoy. So that's kind of how it evolved. Still plans actually to do the cartoon series, still working on all that. So, but that's kind of how I got into content creation. And, my friend who helped me create the series, he was actually like, you need to do news videos. You have the way that you speak about crypto is like very engaging. And so, it took a while before I felt like my content actually did get engaging. But that's kind of how, went from learning about Bitcoin to getting involved in the community, starting my channel and things like that.
Gotcha.
So, Go ahead.
I was going to say, and this is a big question for us. We don't have, nearly as many as, followers, subscribers as you do. And I'm sure there are many others out in the space who are just kind of getting started, right? That moment where you started to get that big time engagement, right? Was there kind of like a light bulb that went off? Was there one or two things that you really, changed or updated for that to happen?
Well, so, I'm real big on content creation and YouTube. I actually have a good friend of mine who's a really big YouTuber in a different niche. And, he gave me some tips and things like that. But content creation and learning how to grow your brand on YouTube is something I'm very passionate about and, I like to help people with. So, kind of a couple of things I did. It's funny. I was talking to somebody about this the other day. When I first started my channel and I had like 20 subscribers, like 10 of them were my own account. I had like 10 different accounts and I would go and I would comment on my own stuff, like for my first several videos, and like they're like half the likes, I'd get like, 12 likes and 10 of them were me. And, it's just a very beginning of a channel, and you want to grow, but it's so hard. And I remember the day I hit 50 subscribers, like that felt like a really big moment for me. Of course, when I got to 100 and I was like, what's the next goal? I got to 500, then I got to 1,000 and, I wanted engagement. I didn't want to have a channel where it was just me talking. If you go look at several channels, not to brag, not that I'm beneath bragging, but not to brag, but my channel has super high engagement. If you look at the number of comments, which are not all my other accounts, by the way, now, but if you look at the comments and you look at the things people are saying, it's a very engaged group. And I'm very, very proud of that. And I've built it that way intentionally because you see bigger channels that might have 20 or 30,000 subscribers, but they'll get like 12 comments on a video. And, I wanted it to be a community. That's the biggest thing. You have to make a community around what you're doing. So, with my cartoon series, the Bit Squad was actually the name of the Avenger name, if you will, of BitBoy and his companions. And so I came up with a name for my community. You want to come up with something unique where people feel ownership in it. And, I do a lot of contests. Kind of something I say is people come for the contests and they stay for the engagement or they stay for the content. So, I'll do contests where people have to make comments on videos. And because of that, they get entered into, whatever the contest may be. But over time, like those comments, you can tell they go from being just like, oh, this is somebody who's just trying to enter the contest to someone who is like actually actively engaged in the video. I'm always surprised when I see comments that are from, like 9 minutes through the video. And I'm like, oh yeah, this person actually watched the whole video. So, contests are really big and naming your community and really, I'm out of all the crypto YouTubers for the Crypto Influencer Awards I make the most comments on my own videos. And those comments are responses to people that make comments on my videos. So I'm always trying to engage with them because engagement works two ways. If you just expect people to come and watch your videos and talk to you, but you're not giving them anything back, then that's not a real community. So, definitely the community is the number one aspect that will help somebody grow a channel.
All right, so speaking of community now, this is obviously the IOST podcast. We want to talk about the IOST community. There's been a little bit of doom and gloom around the price of IOST and kind of the cryptocurrency market in general over the past, I would say, week now. What do you think about that in as far as an IOST perspective as well as the broader crypto market?
I'm not worried at all on either front. For the broader crypto market, I mean, I've come to believe over the last few months that, we're on the way possibly back to all-time highs by the end of the year. I certainly wouldn't have thought that at the beginning of the year. I'm one of the first people that called the bottom on December 15th, which I'm not a trader or some kind of, soothsayer or anything like that. But, in January, I have several videos where I said I believe that December 15th was the bottom. So, it definitely was a very bearish time. And, I never at that point would have thought that all-time highs by the end of this year were a possibility. But I do now believe that that is a possibility, at least approaching those levels, and the next year is going to be really, really, really great. So when we start moving up really fast, like we just did, and we have some pullbacks and some retracements, like it's not that big of a deal. Sometimes you do get to feeling like, oh, the market's turned bearish all of a sudden. I don't feel like really the sentiment overall on Bitcoin is any different today than it was 2 weeks ago. For those that are super, super involved in the community on like the micro level, we kind of talk about crypto differently than the average person, I think. I think the average person that's invested in Bitcoin, I know someone who I actually talked into buying a Bitcoin when it was at about 6,000, and they're really excited. I mean, they're still up on their investment. And so, they don't live by the day-to-day price swings. So for IOST specifically, I think what you have to look at is the run-up that we had, I believe it was in April, was phenomenal. Like we almost got to 2 cents. It was absolutely crazy.
Yep.
And anytime you have a pump that goes outside of the normal crypto market movement, because other projects were not there was a pump, but they weren't pumping nearly as much as IOST was during that time. You're going to get a big retracement, and then you're going to miss out when many other crypto projects are running up, because you kind of like, you kind of busted it. You know what I mean? And we've seen that with a lot of different projects where, they'll go way, way, way up, and then they'll drop. And then over time, they don't seem to get the same amount of pump the other ones do in the short term. And I think that's a big mistake that a lot of people make, is FOMOing into other projects. Like you're like, oh, IOST was 36. It's down to 56 right now. I need to jump out of this coin and jump into one of these other ones that's pumping. And that's how you lose. So I think for the community, you got to stay patient. We are the most decentralized platform out there. It's not even questionable. And when people really start getting a hold of the ROI that's available by voting for the nodes, then people will really start to understand the value of this project. If the market doesn't move at all over the next 6 months, if you're an IOST and you're voting with your nodes, you're still going to make money.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's one of those things, as we talked about on the last 2 podcasts, that really proves the point of price not representing fundamentals. Decentralization, the staking setup. I mean, you just look at the team, right? Jimmy's experience having founded and sold companies in the past. It's one there that seems obvious once you kind of get that pump, once you get that full exposure into the rest of crypto. But for now, patience seems to be key, right? Like the same thing occurred with ETH, the same thing occurred with EOS. It's that patience, understanding that one partnership or one announcement isn't going to send this thing to 25 cents or 10 cents or whatever, right? It's slow growth, just like you would see in a traditional company.
Yeah, I would say yes and no to that. I mean, if we look back to when we did pump in April, like it was really fast. So as long as we're having consistent growth, in terms of just, a straight line from the bottom left of the chart to the top right of the chart, that's good. But we will have moments where we do have big run-ups. And I think if you remember the pump in April, I think that's for all of these people that are in like the Telegram group that are negative or whatever it may be, like, oh, we're falling down CoinMarketCap. You have to remember that we went from number 55 to number 36 in about 4 days. And so you don't want to give up. You want to have the patience. And, I do agree with you 100%. Fundamentals are not attached to price at all. That's why I think one of the biggest coins during the next bull run will be Cardano, because it has zero product and has nothing to nitpick. So, I've thought a lot about that. You have Tron and EOS, and we're already seeing like there's a lot of stuff to nitpick about those projects. And now with IOST, we're kind of in the same ballpark where we have some things to nitpick. Fortunately, we're ranking very high in, decentralization, community, fundamentals, a lot of good stuff. So, but yeah, I agree with you. I do think that we want to see the consistent growth, but for the community, remember, you can pump overnight up like 20 places, which is basically what happened before.
Yeah, 100%. It'll be interesting to see what happens. I think, for me looking at this, I think as we cross that 2 cents, 2.5 cents, that's when we start to kind of make that next leg up, if you will, when it comes to additional exposure, kind of a new round of folks coming into IOST.
Yeah, I think when we hit 2 cents, it'll be a good day for sure.
So
100%.
who's behind BitBoy? Yeah, this seems like obviously like an Avenger-esque, a Superman-esque kind of hero. Who's the man behind BitBoy?
Yeah, we don't know. We're still working that out. I didn't think it was me because he doesn't have a beard, but yeah. So I had kind of a direction. It's funny you asked that. I actually have a meeting tomorrow with I don't know if you guys know Crypto Brecky on Twitter. He's a good friend of mine, and we're actually in talks on trying to get this cartoon actually going. And he has an education in filmmaking and writing scripts and things like that. So we're going to be kind of working a new story. We did have an old story where he was a guy that got the backstory of BitBoy was he got all of his Bitcoins taken in the Mt. Gox hack many years ago. And he basically walked into his job, he quit his job, and then the next day, Mt. Gox happened. He lost all of his money. He didn't have a job, and he jumped off a bridge. And somehow, in trying to kill himself, he became BitBoy. Like he was saved by his companion. It's kind of a long, complicated story, but we may be changing that direction for the cartoon series.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, we may make it a little more simple and maybe not quite so gruesome. So
yeah.
We're still trying to figure that out. But it just started with a friend of mine who is in crypto. We just started talking about it'd be cool if there was an animated series, and this was at the peak of the bull run, and obviously the interest died down after that and things. But it's a very good brand, I think. So somebody made some BitBoy flip flops and put them on a merch store. Oh, they're the coolest things you ever saw. So I actually ordered them today. So. But, my brand is very family friendly. All my videos, there's no cussing. I try to, when, we have guests on the show and stuff, I let them know ahead of time. I have 3 kids. I got a kid 4, 6, and 7. And, because of that, I want to make sure everything that I do, they can watch and not feel, we don't feel like we have to censor anything. So, in the process of getting some kids merch and stuff made, so it kind of transcends just the crypto community. Hopefully can reach kids too and tell them about crypto and be educational. I mean, that's the thing with cartoons now, right? They got to be somewhat educational.
Yeah, 100%. And I think you're pulling from an audience in crypto that are generally gamers. They're generally comic fans. They're generally technology oriented or kind of see themselves being pulled to those various niches. So yeah, it makes a ton of sense. Keep us posted on that front. That sounds like pretty awesome and also unique thing. I don't think we've seen other cartoon characters within crypto really.
Certainly not family friendly ones.
Right. Yeah.
There's a couple out there, but the popular thing is to try to be like Rick and Morty or Adult Swim cartoons on Cartoon Network or whatever, which is fine. I mean, that's a fine niche. It's just not my brand. So definitely hope I can reach, an audience that is not necessarily reached. Yeah.
And they're if it's like a Twitter Avi or something, they're certainly not, they're not going about writing scripts or anything like this. So yeah, props to you there. That's awesome.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
So what's the way forward for IOST and what the team is doing? What do you think is coming in the next 3, 4, 5, 6 months?
Well, I think the number one thing is we've got to have more workable dApps, more usable dApps. I know I actually am trying to work on getting some Android devices because I think some of them don't necessarily work on Apple devices. I'm getting an Android phone on Friday just to be able to play like a few of the dApps so you need that for. But someone in my community told me that they downloaded or not downloaded, they're using Horse Saga and IOST World and said that they're both foreign, and he's an American and he's having a hard time. He doesn't even really know how to use them. So I think that bridging that gap between the international IOST audience and the dApps themselves and trying to make them more friendly for Americans to use, because obviously if you look at the content creators that are pushing IOST, it's mainly in terms of pure YouTubers, me, Crypto Stash, and Crypto Beatles, and we're all American. We do have international audience, but I think that we have to have some of these dApps that more than gambling dApps. Like IOST Play is great. Like for Tron Bet has been great. Gambling dApps are kind of the baseline. They're the easiest thing to make that works on the blockchain and easy to work out bugs. Plus, there's plenty of examples on how to do it already. But we need some real games that aren't gambling that have some uniqueness to them. Some other kinds of dApps as well. And once those dApps really start, getting used and it's easier to use them. I tried to use one the other day. I think it was the Ninja dApp, Sneaky Ninja or something like that. Like, it was really hard to get going. Like I couldn't even really make it work. So, and no, that's not a diss on them. I mean, it's just we're a brand new community, a brand new platform, and still trying to work out bugs. So, I think that I understand that the dApps are third party. Obviously, the IOST team is not making the dApps. But I do think for the project in general, like that's the next thing that we have to have something that really takes off. I mean, look at what TronBet has done I know I just said we don't want a gambling dApps only. Look what TronBet has done for Tron. I mean, TronBet's absolutely huge. I played the poker when they had the alpha out a couple weeks ago, maybe a month ago, and it is really, really good. It works awesome. So, I do think we have to have kind of some dApps that are going to pull the community forward to show the use of a decentralized platform.
Yeah, I would agree 100%. And the thing that we seem to start to see is that each protocol level, dApp, smart contract focused project here is kind of, certainly they're TronBet and there are other kind of smaller dApps, right? They're your third party dApps that have a few dozen or 100 or maybe 1,000 users on a 24-hour basis. But each one now seems to have what I would kind of call like a beacon dApp, right? A dApp that is going to get exposure not just around the entire cryptocurrency community, but outside of it as well, right? So Tron, you have BitTorrent, ETH obviously had CryptoKitties and now has Cheese Wizards. We were talking to those folks last week. EOS just announced Voice, which is their new social media platform of sorts. So when you look at IOST, and I was talking to Ben about this a little bit last night, the easiest kind of win, especially when you compare it to where those other beacon dApps are for those other protocols, is Burmy, right? Where we've been told a lot of, about all of the growth that has occurred outside of the cryptocurrency community. And obviously we're all excited to see what can happen once that actually kind of merges onto IOST. So where do you see Burm kind of fitting in the short term and the long term here? And do you think that would be enough to help IOST, be propelled back into that top 50, be really solidified as a top 4 or top 2 protocol?
Yeah, I mean, it's one that has name recognition. And even when you name the other ones from the other platforms, they don't have name recognition. I mean, I remember people talking about, Burmy and Burminal, in my Telegram group for a long time. So, it definitely has name recognition. I do think that that's really important. And I do think having something that's outside of a gambling dApp, like, look, IOST Play is great. I'm not going to say anything bad about them. I think I may be doing a video for them in the future. However, I think you don't necessarily want the beacon of your ecosystem to be a gambling dApp.
100%.
So I'm a huge gambler. So I go to I'm going to play in the WSOP actually right after the Bitcoin 2019 conference here in a couple weeks. We're going to trip. Yeah, excited about that. So not saying anything bad about gambling, but we know from the appearance from the outside. I do think it's really important to have something outside of that. The way the public views cryptocurrency in general obviously is not good. I mean, Silk Road tarnished that. We got a story that maybe Satoshi was a cartel leader. Like we all got all kinds of negative stuff that the outside looks at when they look at cryptocurrency. And so, as far as a gambling dApp, like it would just be better if you had something else. So I think that, Burmy definitely has a shot to be something different and have some name recognition. And, I'm not going to say it can pull the entire community forward, it could propel us into the top 10 or something like that. I think you got to have a lot of working dApps to do that. Tron obviously has Tron to me is the closest thing to IOST. It is what I would consider to be the second most decentralized platform out of the big four. but they have Justin Sun out there. I mean, look what he did this week with Warren Buffett, and the marketing. The fundamentals are great. Over time, when that connection between fundamentals and price becomes more obvious, obviously IOST is going to move to the front, in my opinion. But we need more people talking about IOST. That's the thing that's going to propel it forward up coin market cap. I did a video this week with a super clickbaity title, called "The #1 Way to Make Passive Income in Crypto," and it's about IOST and voting for nodes and staking. Because, if you go to stakingrewards.com, it is clearly #1. So the reason why I made that video was not for views. It wasn't to, it wasn't because I wanted people clicking on anything. The reason is because that is a good way to get the message out of IOST. And I think that's the thing we all need to be asking ourselves is, how can we reach people outside of our community? If I had named that video IOST, a great way to make ROI, people aren't going to necessarily click on it. But I did it in a way that hopefully people that are interested in making passive income will click on the video. That way more people can learn about IOST. So we all have to be trying to figure out what we can do to do our best for the community, but to also try to reach people outside the community. And that's how we're going to move up coinmarketcap.com.
There's such a dichotomy there, I feel like, because especially with Tron, you have Justin Sun kind of almost over-promising and under-delivering a lot of times, but it still makes Tron move, right? It still gets Tron out there, and it does exactly what you're talking about there. So I think there's something that the IOST team can do that Justin has shown works, but also, kind of following that old-time saying of under-promising and over-delivering also kind of, gives a little bit of what would you call honesty to the platform, whereas Tron kind of suffers from that in a sense too, right?
They don't kind of they do.
yeah, exactly. So it's kind of that dichotomy. Who's getting the invite to go sit down with Justin and Warren?
Jimmy, right?
Jimmy,
come on, Jimmy.
Jimmy, where you at?
I mean, if I were to pick the Avengers of crypto, the Avengers of blockchain, I would say you definitely want to have Charlie Lee, Vitalik, Charles Hoskinson, and then probably outside of that, I would be going to people like, obviously he said Bitcoin is rat poison, so you want to have a big Bitcoin name there, whether it's
Andres
or obviously Antonopoulos is the first one that comes to mind, or Saifedean or one of those. I don't know if I'm saying his name right, but and I don't know. I'm sure he'll probably bring some. He'll bring another big person from Tron, maybe the CEO of BitTorrent. He is the CEO of BitTorrent. Whoever the top guy with BitTorrent is, I forgot what his name is, but I think those are some people that he should definitely take.
Yeah, and I would hope he brings someone like a Anthony Pompliano, somebody who basically can speak Warren Buffett's language, right? He has that institutional kind of understanding and experience to be able to just go beyond hey, this is how staking works on Tron. Actually speak to him in a language that he understands.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's really super important, obviously. But I did, I was really impressed with Justin Sun with his interview he did on Squawk Box yesterday. I think, did you guys get a chance to watch it?
Yeah, it was great. Yeah, he did well.
He came off very well because, the day before he was getting killed for it. In the community, he's misusing Tron's funds and doing this stuff, and it's all for show. And we know he's marketing. We really know underlying what he's doing. But he said he was, a big reason was it was a San Francisco charity, which Tron is in San Francisco, and that's who's actually getting the money. And I thought, it sounded good when he was talking about blockchain. So, obviously there's a little bit of the English being his 7th or 8th language that comes across sometimes. But outside that, I thought he did a really good job. So could end up being actually a good thing overall for crypto. So.
Yeah, I think we got that impression as well. So we only got a couple minutes left here. If you want to talk to our viewers and let them know where they can find you, where your content's at, and things like that.
Okay. You can find me on my channel. That's the #1 place. BitBoy Crypto. I forgot the name of my own channel for a second, but it's called BitBoy Crypto. So you can find me there. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at BitBoy_HODL. You can find me on Telegram. I have a Telegram group called Bit Squad. And then also you can check out my podcast, Beards and Bitcoins, with my co-host Jay Chains.
Nice, man. Well, that's awesome. Sounds like you're really out there pumping content. Obviously, it's working. Appreciate all the things you're doing for IOST. I know the viewers appreciate that as well. So keep up the good work. I'm sure we'll check in here with you again on back on this podcast or on your podcast or something. But keep up the good work. Let's keep collaborating and go IOST.
Yeah, thank you so much for allowing me to come on. And, just for everyone who's in the IOST community, I'm very genuine about my love for IOST and my belief in it. And, when you are viewing my content, I hope that comes off.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, brother.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, man.